just in terms of the quality of player, but also his lineup now does have to answer some questions, because this is the aggro lineup that Sequinox has to be a little bit scared of. I mentioned earlier, he has Quest Rogue in there. It's a little bit unusual with the other decks that he's playing, but he feels, and I tend to agree with him, that he can get Quest Rogue through most aggressive lineups. Those being aggro lineups that feature like Token Druid and an Odd Paladin. It's very easy to sneak a win with Quest Rogue there, even though you're unfavored. Aggro lineups where there's an aggro mage in that slot where the Odd Paladin might be, that's going to be a lot tougher for Sequinox to pick up a win with that Quest Rogue.
Yeah, and as we kick off game number 1 here between Sequinox and Tom, it's very interesting to me, if you just recall all the way back to the pre-show, we talked about mage dropping off, right? It was like a tiny percentage represented, yet Tom, one of the most successful players in the whole region, has brought it and now had it banned. What do you make of that? Like, is that just because it's Sequinox's sort of strange lineup, or do you think Tom's mage has been drawn some bans a little bit earlier as well?
I was actually tempted to go aggro lineup with aggro mage again this week. After, I picked it last week, it seemed strong then, and looking at the field this time around, I thought it might do reasonably well again. The big sticking point with that is where you come down on this debate of exactly how good or bad aggro mage is in the other aggro matchups, right? It's something that I know APX Void, who is one of the most well-known tempo mage players, has been very kind of vociferously insisting that it's just fine in a lot of those aggro matchups that most people think that it really suffers in. And I guess Tom is a believer as well.
Yeah, it seems to be making it work so far at 3-0, but so is Sequinox. But let's take a look at this matchup. It is going to be the Token Druid from Sequinox, and then at Tom with the Zoo.
Yeah, Tom got off to a rocket start there as well with the Happy Ghoul draw early on. Turn 2, generating enormous amount of power. Sequinox just had the ability to fight back against wave number 1, but hey, we use, as Hearthstone casters, the term "he drew the nuts" quite liberally. But Happy Ghoul's start into Keleseth Kobold Librarian on 3 is about as close as it gets without just the second Happy Ghoul involved in the opening salvo.
Yeah, and as you were summing up the turns leading up that before the Keleseth was drawn, one of my, continuing the conversation would have been, yeah, it's even great he's had a strong start, and he has the gas with Librarian.
Yeah.
Well, Andy has the gas with Librarian, and the thing he's drawing's buffed, which is even better, so huge turn for Tom. And now, can Sequinox even realistically do something here? He can do one or the other. He can make some tokens, or he can swipe. But swipe doesn't really get the job done, does it?
It's not bad going into the Giggling Inventor turn, though, because you take 2 bodies off the board here, and then, Giggling Inventor, the magic number is 4, right? Like, 4 attacks get gobbled up by Giggling Inventor before they're allowed to attack with any initiative after that. So taking this board of 4 down to a board of 2 with the swipe does get a lot of work done going into that Giggling turn.
Yeah, I'm wondering how good Whispering Woods is, though, because it does a similar job of doing the points of damage to set up for, say, swipe, for example.
Sure.
And also, you're not vulnerable to Dreadlord yet. There is only 1 card in Tom's hand, 2 on the draw, of course, but you cannot play a Dreadlord.
That's fair.
So with the tokens, just as good as they're ever going to be at this point, Sequinox is going to go for that swipe to set up the Giggling. Playing gigs on curve, of course, is strong. You do want to play it as soon as possible, but I feel like this Whispering Woods is just really getting worse as time goes on right now.
It does get better very quickly, though. I agree that, for the next 3 or 4 turns, maybe more, it's going to be quite dead with this line that Sequinox has taken. But it's the kind of card where if you do survive until you get to cast an Ultimate Infestation, for example, it then immediately wins the game the turn after that when you're able to load out the Whispering Woods Soul of the Forest board. So I get it, but I like the argument there, because instead of the swipe Giggling Inventor curve that I was looking at, you're looking at more Whispering Woods into swipe, and you float a mana the turn afterwards, but your swipe is so much better with all those 1/1s.
And well, Giggling Inventor is still just good.
Yes.
Right? It's never a bad card to drop down against Zoo, so you're always getting that value there.
Spreading Plague. Card that we have not yet mentioned in the matchup, and it's a pretty big deal. Zoo is probably the best aggro deck at dealing with Spreading Plague without, some tech cards thrown in. Obviously, if you're going to Mossy Horror or Void Ripper or whatever else that's Spreading Plague, then some magic can happen. But Zoo just has, you know, the 3/3s and the 4/4s and the Fungal Mancers and everything that can kind of chew through the Spreading Plague and keep developing the board behind it. But of course, it's a big help.
Sorry, I'm just laughing at those. Not laughing in a bad way, but you just see the achievements from these players here. Both of them are anchors in their HGG teams, in their respective teams. Tom, you know, first world champion for the APAC region. Anchor for his team for Global Games. Sequinox, anchor for his team for Global Games. It really is, you know, Sequinox much less well known in the grand scale, but really it's just the battle of the titans at the moment from each of their respective mini regions, so to speak, within the Asia-Pacific total region. It's a really cool matchup, actually. I feel like Sequinox is doing his best lately to bust out onto the scene one way or the other. Apparently, I'm sure the guys over in Poland will tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure they said he said he was the most handsome player in did he say Asia Pacific or did he say Singapore? I can't remember.
I mean, I wouldn't argue with either.
Yeah.
I'd probably have to fight you to the death with the surrender argument on the other side. Although, is surrender handsome or is he cute? Because there's a distinction there, right?
Yeah, I'd lean more towards cute.
Okay. Yeah. This is important content.
Yeah, okay, we've just had official confirmation that was indeed in his profile. I think his voting page for his HGG.
Okay.
Okay, so
again, the Whispering Woods has some merits here. He can actually go for a pretty competitive board this turn. He does end up going with the Spreading Plague. But he had the option to just Whispering Woods, Power of the Wild to buff, and basically just contest the whole board 1-for-1. Tom would still have a slight edge, but it would lead into a world where, like, if he wanted to trade or if Sequinox got to make the trades on his terms the next turn, he would be setting up like a Spreading Plague into a board of a bunch of 1-health minions, which is a really nice position to be in.
And still not weak to the Dreadlord, which is the point you always have to look out for Whispering Words. Yeah, because this is kind of the same thing, except your Whispering Woods is ever so slightly worse. Now Whispering Woods is better, obviously.
Yeah, but now, because he hasn't really done anything to compete with the board, like using that Whispering Woods a little bit more aggressively, he's in a position where a Whispering Woods Soul of the Forest turn can potentially just leave him dead on board next turn if he's not able to answer some of this board state. Does have Branching Pass for armor, but again, that's just 0 initiative, no answer to the board.
What about Branching Pass for armor? Maybe you could draw 1, maybe, and then just Power of the Wild for 3/2. It might just be enough health plus mini board for Tom to trade it away. Because after seeing one swipe, he does have decent trades available to him.
I don't hate that play, but I think if you are going down that line, you do Branching for armor twice. Because
yeah, like I said, you could maybe draw
your
a card
complete plan is in your hand, right? If you were going to go with that line, your complete plan is just gain armor, then you just try and live the 2 turns so that you can Whispering Woods Soul of the Forest, and then you already have the Savage Roar, which then trades the board state out and wins the game with your remaining 2/2s. But we've both been kind of advocating at different points for this Whispering Woods to be played a little bit more aggressively, so I definitely can't hate on this too much.
This is my worry about playing it here, though, is that, well, now the Soul of the Forest sucks. Basically, you just regenerate a 2/2, which is very, very poor. And now the draw has to happen now, right?
Yeah.
So you know, like you could, there was a chance you could have done this the other way, and actually got some security. But now Sequinox,
ouch.
Not what you're after. And his glance instantly to the side, just not anything in particular, but more an annoyance than anything else, shows that those strong shells are not really what he was looking for. Weird point is, what was he even looking for to draw this turn?
Something that was not these cards that are in his hand.
But what?
Yeah,
like
I don't know.
Spellstones?
Right.
But even Spellstones don't do anything?
Spellstone off the first one, he can at least
Saronite.
then armor up and take off the second. Saronite would have been fine. Swipe would have just found him another turn. Even like, I don't know, 13, 15, he's not quite dead on board, so even just like Branching Pass into a Wild Growth there, and then UI the next turn, that's so unlikely to keep him alive over the course of 2 turns. Almost impossible, actually. 4 mana 2/2.
Can't help but get overly caught up, which I know is a bad thing, but in playing that Whispering Woods ages ago. Like, soup on turn 4. Going into the Warlock turn 4 from Tom.
Yeah, I think there were a couple of opportunities. Turn 4 and turn 6, I believe, were the 2 opportunities to actually try and fight for board with it a little bit more aggressively. And he would, be in a slightly more comfortable position here and have maybe, 1 or 2 turns to then find that UI and actually be able to cast the UI without dying.
What I will say is playing it before the turn you can play it with Soul of the Forest. When you have Soul of the Forest in hand, feels bad.
Oh, it's a big call, yeah.
Yeah, it feels bad.
Right.
Sometimes you have to, but it's not fun when you do. And Tom has had, outside of that opening, I wouldn't say a mind-blowing zoo hand. I think it's strong, but...
I think it would be... At the point where he's played Happy Ghoul on 2 and then Keleseth on 3 with a Kobold Librarian, I just think, like, it would be disingenuous to say any cards you draw after that don't constitute a fantastic draw position. Because it just doesn't matter. They're all +1/+1, and they're all minions.
Apart from the ones that aren't.
But even they are minions. But that's the point, he hasn't drawn any of those, right?
Right,
he drew
yeah.
minion, and just killed him with it.
Yeah, and didn't particularly get punished for that either, as Tom takes the first win over Sequinox, the way it matches up against Sequinoxes.
I think he's favored. I think that aggro mage having to draw out the ban from Sequinox because it's not the aggro lineup that he kind of insured himself against, and it's the aggro lineup that his quest rogue is the most vulnerable to. So getting rid of the aggro mage from Sequinox side still makes sense, but it's a necessity on his part, and it goes to show you that he's the one that's really up against it in terms of the matchups in the series.
Right, and it is going to be Druid again from Sequinox, and Tom shifting over to his odd rogue. I don't think there's anything too crazy in his list. It seems fairly standard.
No, he's playing Myra's, which is still not a given these days for some reason. Still find it baffling. Like, I can kind of see the argument. Myra's is one of those cards where you can, like, very much get baited into, like, oh, I played it and then I won the game, and ignore all those times it just sat in your hand and it just wasn't a minion that you could have played the whole time.
Right now.
Exactly. But just the amount of power that's stacked into one card, and the fact that it's surprisingly effective even against more aggressive decks in matchups like that, like not just making sure you don't run out of gas against control mirrors, against control matchups, but being able to just flood resources against aggro decks is actually very important as well. Like, for me, it's core to the deck.
Yeah, pretty much sort of like the final nail in the coffin, right, for the aggro matchups, because you just have more options, which is very, very important. But speaking of minions, Henchclan Thug coming off the top there just in time. It's actually going to be pretty strong, which means Tom is going to be able to pressure onto the board. Excuse me, and it's all about the Sequinox can answer. He does have Coin Swipe, to just say a pretty hard no, but that does slow him down quite significantly.
It does, and that's the big, big difference between ramp and no ramp here. Having to throw out this coin for the swipe means that he's kind of back on a wing and a prayer and dealing with the next minion, because Spellstone is not going to be good enough against a big minion. You distracted me with your giggle. What?
It's because if we look at the players Tom has beaten so far in this Swiss, there's Switch, okay, cool. There's Zoki, and then who I can only presume is a bigger brother, Doki, the second evolution.
So we're just waiting for like Pocky, Nocky, and Rocky.
Yeah,
told.
It's like he's taking down the 7 dwarfs or something here. There aren't enough rounds of Swiss.
This is really cute from Tom, by the way. He preemptively cold-blooded his Blood Knight, recognizing that there wasn't enough armor to have been gained from a Spellstone to be able to kill it cleanly. And a swipe was already used with the coin on the previous turn, which means that Sequinox is likely to have to hero power it to take it down, even if he has Spellstone in hand. So that Cold Blood just kind of gets its damage done just by being played on curve, which is actually kind of a really key play. Just also understanding that he's fully allocating his mana next turn because he has Giggling Inventor in hand and 5 mana available.
So what do you think about... He got the damage in, which is what you want from Cold Blood. If it hits face once, worth, done.
Sure.
But what do you think about it being used on the Blood Knight? Was it used just as a case of, well, okay, I'm not going to wait for Blood Knight to go off against his potential Annoytrons?
Wait, you're asking about playing the Blood Knight versus not playing the Blood Knight? Yeah,
Just there's nothing else to play.
He had
right?
no other play.
Right.
Yeah, he had a handful of 5-drops. He's not just going to pass the turn against the deck that he needs to be aggressive against.
Okay.
Just let them develop.
Is it actually better to trade the 2-1 in first here if you're going to Fungalmancer? And hit the 2 Annoytrons?
Mushroom power!
Why?
Just because of a spreading plague. You just leave more minions alive on the board. Because he can trade off his board now, right? And then just get 4 spreading plague. It's not the best spreading plague in the world, don't get me wrong, but I just wonder how valuable in Odd Rogue an extra minion is versus just having the stats anyway.
Sure. This is a nice looking Power of the Wild turn, though. Curves him into Malfurion from there, and then
I
he's
like
really
it.
not far from that big Infestation turn.
And I'm going to go out on a limb here. This is not a confirmed stat. This is a Raven stat, so often wrong. But I feel like Malfurion, its win rate versus Odd Rogue when played on 7 is probably close to like, what, 90% or something?
Wow, okay.
I think, well, if you play it...
I was with you. I was like, this is a smart point. I agree with all of this. And then you just had to just highball the
it would be weird if I didn't, right?
Yeah.
All I mean is I feel like it's that powerful. 90%
really
probably an exaggeration.
Yeah.
But 2-1-5 taunts, 5 armor, and a hero power that negates most of the damage that rogues can do on top of those taunts. It's insane. It's the card I want against Odd Rogue. If I'm good.
Yep.
And any other class actually, I'd take it.
He's just been like starved of dagger this whole game. Hasn't found the time to press the button that's the entire point of the deck up until this point. He's just
Weird,
been
isn't it?
playing minions and floating mana because none of his minions add up to the right numbers because they're all odd.
So all the right numbers are even.
Yes.
Okay. Learning mathematical... I was going to say mathematical things, and I just feel like I'm just failing at words right now.
Yeah.
Learning mathematics.
Forget the
That's
maths.
awful.
Learn English first,
Yeah.
and then we'll work on it.
It's because I've been out here for so long.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, well, Sequinox is deep in thought now as he has Nourish available to him, and he has double UI. So there's enough health to probably survive. My worry is a UI play, or a play to get to UI next turn, too linear? Sequinox here.
It might be. I think he has plenty of stuff to do in his hand to fill turn 7, 8, 9, but I don't think he necessarily needs
Right,
to.
that's my point, right? He
Right.
could just make good plays instead and get there, because if he nourishes, he almost commits to playing UI,
Right.
because it's the whole point of the setup. Yet he's took tons of damage, and for all he knows, there's another Cold Blood coming his way to face. So I do like this. I find it hard not to play Malfurion.
Yeah, this curve just makes sense because you can mouth this turn, and then next turn you can just nourish into Giggling Inventor, right?
Yeah.
And then you just Ultimate Infestation the turn after that. So I don't think there was any great rush for Sequinox to skip a turn that involved playing Malfurion, right? Like
Exactly.
just doesn't make any sense.
And look, he's just safe. And now, there's Myra's Unstable Element. A bit of a sigh and a breath from Sequinox, because now the game becomes very straightforward. I love that animation, by the way.
It's really
Yeah, because it just didn't even need to be, right? It could have just been the deck's empty animation. But anyway, now Sequinox has a very straightforward job. He needs to beat those 10 cards. Once he's done that, it's just a game over. Kind of weird, like, it's just not a scenario that often has come up in Hearthstone before.
It's much more interesting this way as well than, like, because the other scenario you see this is in, like, heavy control mirrors when it's come down to fatigue, right? And both of you are out of cards, and you both have 8 or 9 cards left in hand. It's like, right, how do I beat these 9 cards? Well, in control mirrors, it's kind of interesting, but also in a way kind of boring because you know exactly what all of those cards are, so it's solvable. This isn't. This is Sequinox having to play against like an average collection of 10 cards from what was remaining in Tom's deck, and that is so much more difficult, so much more complex, and then to me, so much more interesting.
And we saw in, I think it was the series Dan and Kibler were casting, where the Myra's was for the double Cold Blood for the win.
Yes.
And like, well, that's also things you have to consider. If Myra's can get you just a straight up lethal out, it's really cool to play around, actually. But now Malfurion just doing the work, taking down the Valspine, and as you said, Sequinox just has the UI available didn't go for the Giggling.
Yeah, Hero Power, the 3-3, instead of playing his Giggling Inventor. Which I can only imagine comes down to the threat of second Blood Knight coming out from tom60229. That one was played on curve early on, but there is still a second one that could have been picked up out of the deck there.
This hurts though. Especially because that Hench Clan isn't going to die to UI now. Neither is that 7-3. Ouch. So, does now Annoyed Giggling Inventor and like Branching Paths have to be the play?
This just goes back to exactly what we were talking about previously, right? Like, Sequinox kind of picked a card in Blood Knight and decided that he just didn't want to get absolutely wrecked by that one card. But because he chose to select that one card, he just suffered to so many different combinations, right? Like, there's various big boards that Tom could have made here involving pushing damage with a Cold Blood that then UI was going to be uncastable because there's just too much damage coming back again the other way. That's why that turn, I was trying to sell it as just being so difficult from Sequinox's side, because how are you supposed to know which combination of 10 cards you're supposed to play around?
Yeah, I mean, the way I think I would have tried to do it was risk versus reward, right? Reward, but if there's no Blood Knight, that is horrible to get through as Rogue. Is that the best play you can make as a reward factor? The risk, well, they still have to attack into 2 taunts, and there's a 2-1 on the board after that. So maybe it was just good enough once you add all those things together. But now the hits go through. There is no Blood Knight, of course, we can see that, but there is a pretty Hench Clan Thug here, and the 7-3 out of the square. But look at this now, it's just usage of resources, all these tools, because he's drawn his deck. Has opened Tom up to be able to push so much damage here.
Now UI takes Sequinox up to 16. There's 12-14 on board plus a Leroy in hand. So yet again, Ultimate Infestation is uncastable. He can, Branching Pass twice to go up to 23 and take 2 off the board. Could be 14, 20, 22. Does that keep him alive? I think it does, right?
Well, so he goes up to...
Branching Pass for armor twice, he goes to 23. He Hero Powers the 3-3, so that's just taking the 3 anyway, and he takes the 2 off the board. So 23, 14 on board, 20, 22.
No, he's dead, right? Well, if you say he goes up to 23 and then he hits
the
3
he's dead exactly.
Yeah, he hits the 3.
He's dead exactly to the Hench Clan growing 1-1, yeah, you're right. Which all comes down to a simple solution. He dead.
I thought you were going to say, Giggling Inventor with Nourish.
is not
What's funny is, if Sequinox could get over this hurdle, we can see in the hand now, there's nothing.
Yeah.
There's Baku, who cares, it's one singular minion. You could mess with the fact that it's one minion pretty easily as Druid. And then 2 1-drops, 3 1-drops, sorry, 4 minus. And then Leroy, that's such a low impact turn, but Fatigue's gonna hit him, but I don't think he cares because Leroy Jenkins, Sequinox gives it a quick nod, but that's gonna be game 2 going to the world champ. Is he gonna make this a Swift 3-0? Make it in Swiss, a Swift 4-0 as well. I feel like Tom made a move to Europe a couple of years ago. You know, if he moved to America, he would just be dominating and would be clearly deemed across the world as the #1 player, I would say, after this kind of length of performance from him. But let's see if he can do it.
Yeah, and now here is where things do start to get a little bit interesting because, again, I mentioned this in the pre-show, but I kind of liked Sequinox's lineup, but didn't understand 1 or 2 things about him. So I DM'd him on Twitter and asked him to like explain some of the choices, like bringing Quest Rogue, for example, and some of the tech options. And he said that, like, in a nutshell, this is a target token Druid lineup. It's just that he didn't want to go all in on that strategy and thought that Quest Rogue was just a fine enough deck that it would be able to find a win through some of these aggro strategies that would beat him. And it was just such a strong deck to have against other strategies that he might run into. So yes, Tom is 2-0 up, but the deck that Sequinox most had in mind when building this lineup is still the one that Tom has to win.
And a really good shout from Sequinox. You know, we talked a lot about Tom then, but making that call, and then we saw this morning as we checked out in the pre-show, the ups and downs of class representation and deck representation.
Yeah.
Token Druid up, all other Druids way down. It's like, wow, that is a very, very good meta call for this tournament, but let's see if it pays off. Tom playing the Violet Teacher version of the list as well, so Tom keeping it a bit more old school, I'll say. Not been impressed with the new Token Druid list. Reminds me very much of Pavel as well. Pavel never used to play the new lists. He was like, well, I won this tournament 2 months ago with these lists. I'm just going to play them again and win, and then he does, and you're like, what? It's crazy.
There's a lot of power that's coming in play with these Mountain Giants, but Sequinox is a little bit just behind the curve in terms of dealing with these tokens spreading out. Hasn't found a Defile just yet. Hellfire, not what you really want to be lining up against 5 health minions with Design Shields, but at least he can stop the bleeding with the Sun Fury Protector. This is essentially a play from Sequinox that says, you know what, yeah, okay, you win. I can't deal with the board you're making, but I'm going to make you deal with mine. Some finger counting going on from
I'm just wondering.
broadcast colleague.
I was just working out whether branching pass double attack is better than branching pass attack once, but then armor, because you get one, you get the armor, but also the spell stone is playable. I think just branching pass double attack looks pretty good here.
Throws out the coin first to get the extra token.
Yeah, you could have coin double swipe available though. Unless he's just going for a completely different play.
Wait, what? Coining double swipe with 6 men?
No, next turn.
Oh,
I'm saying if he, because he uses it now, he could have saved it and had coin double swipe. Yeah, just get more tokens on the board. Play the spellstone anyway. This is like maximum output damage you could have done this turn, which is absolutely fine.
Yeah, and the hero power does end up being important here, right? Like, he does actually end up with full mana to utilization from the coin, so I guess it does make sense. It's just when you look at the board state he's left with, he's basically like gassed himself out already and left a board that dies to Dread Infernal, Hellfire, and Defile.
Yeah, and I will say that one positive for Tom is that this Nourish is probably just going to be for draw this game, and I think that's what might have pushed him over the edge to make this play.
Sure.
He's like, well, okay, say Defile comes down, well, the 4 mana turn isn't going to be that crazy from Sequinox pressure-wise. And then, okay, he has a slow turn, I'll make my slow turn, draw 3 cards, 4 on the draw, of course, and then refill that way, and I think that's what he's going to go for. Is he ramping? Oh,
He drew.
For a second, I thought he went ramp. I was like, wow, Tom's just going to draw UI? Like, he just is. It's his trademark card after the keeping the World Championships.
Yeah, exactly. We keep UI, we draw UI off the top. We ramp to 10 without UI in hand. This is just how we play Hearthstone.
It wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, this refill's looking not bad, actually. A lot of value there, Malfurion, the Whispering Woods as well, and Giggling Inventor. And also as well, I think, seeing the Hellfire, are you gaining any form of read that there's no Defile?
Not necessarily,
So,
no.
so Defile you think is more valuable later?
Defile is an insane card in this matchup because of Whispering Woods, Soul of the Forest. If you have 1 minion in play, that's a full clear with Defile.
Time waits for no one.
You would rather throw away a Hellfire in that spot than a Defile if you have both options.
Just because it looks unintuitive.
Right, especially since it was the 5 mana turn, right? So you could Defile forward. On turn 6, it's a much heavier debate because you could use Defile to fully get control of the board again with a 4-drop, whereas you couldn't do that with Defile. But on 5, I think you'd always Hellfire even if Defile was in your hand.
Okay, so let's see what the development onto the board is going to be for Sequinox here. He has a few options. Is it weird that Tom hit face then? Does it matter too much?
On a 7 mana turn, no, I don't think it matters. I think taking the damage is just free damage. You know, it doesn't really change
Because
anything.
I don't normally quibble too much over this. I normally just go face anyway, because that's just the way I play. But like, hitting them for 1 directly to 15, sometimes you have to stop and think about it a little bit and be like, I've literally put them to 50. They don't even have to tap this turn.
But if that wasn't clear to anyone at home, like if your opponent's on an odd-numbered turn, they are going to life tap. There is no way for an
unless they're dead on board.
Yeah, exactly. There's no way for an even lock to spend an odd amount of mana without pressing hero power. So if they're at 16, they're going to be at 14. So the hero power to the face is actually just free damage.
Do like the spiders here. You've seen a Hellfire.
So
That's 1 removal gone.
possibilities.
And the taunts don't really do much with this hand, especially. You don't have any damage buffs from hand, so it's not like you can get a cheeky lethal from, you know, just a random double Savage Roar branching or something with off just 2-1 bind.
Does pick up the Defile now, so he has a bit of security. All his job is now really is just to keep hold of the board, and then he's able to answer that first big Soul of the Forest play with that Defile in hand, as I said, as long as he has one minion available.
I wonder...
Your magic shall not
Okay.
cease.
Well, I was looking at the silence, thinking, fine, it's one of the better silence targets, but I was also wondering, like, how quickly do you start using these heal cards? Because now that the control is there, from Sequinox, it has the board control, all he needs to do is just not die,
Sure.
and then he wins. Because there was just a moment looking at this hand, swipe, swipe face, UI face, let's see if you've got heal. It's a very valid tactic considering there's no buffs in hand for Tom at the moment.
It's not the worst plan I've ever heard, honestly.
I'm not surprised, Katarina, for you. I come up with some pretty bad plans. Oh!
Value!
The count!
Black Knight value!
Blood Knight, who cares? Mossy Horror, who cares?
Yeah,
Black Knight, that Annoyatron.
Wrong knight, idiot.
I'd love it if there was just like a horror in Mossy Horror in hand, and he's still just Black Knight's a 1-2, just to be like, yes, take this.
It's just kind of awkward. Again, being a 9-mana turn. I think, yeah, Black Knighting the Annoyatron, all jokes aside, is something that Sequinox would be relatively happy to do. It's just the fact that he doesn't really get to do anything else alongside that that's slightly awkward.
I think Spellstone in the
yeah.
Violet Teacher seems like a relatively high priority here.
None.
It's a good deal with it this way. Sure. I can see that.
Wow, that 4-10 taunt actually is gets an extra minion, gets an extra taunt on the board. I don't know about you, Sol, but to me, Sequinox looks like he's cleaning this one up pretty quickly. Although... Hey.
Sequinox immediately.
It's like, right, Japan, one.
Yeah.
I mean, he has Shadow Flame, right? So whichever way you look at it, it can't be too bad.
Yeah, he has all
Because he can tap the 4-2 into one of these, then Shadow Flame, even the 7-1, and then Defile, and he goes off. Or just do this and save Defile, why not?
Yeah, it's just trade honestly, which there's really not a whole lot wrong with it in that position. You've got such great control of the board, you maintain 10 points of taunt still in play. Makes a lot of sense to me.
Kind of surprised he didn't just play a Shroom Brewer there to heal up one of the taunts. Again, talking over tiny points here, but... Did he remove a Spellstone with that? One was played, definitely.
I think he took care of one. Sounds right. And then all of a sudden, Soul of the Forest board number 2 comes down, and Sequinox, having preserved that Defile, is just in a perfectly happy spot to deal with this as well.
Wow, Defile number 2. Cast them both!
There it goes. That's a very simple matchup. Honestly, you draw your Defiles, you wait for the right time to use them, and Token Druid just kind of goes home and cries, and now I'm sure we will be seeing some of these Shroom Brewers come out into play just to secure this final board position.
Yeah, we saw there Sequinox just not really taking any risks that whole game, right? It's more of something has to go wrong for me to lose, as opposed to something has to go, or I have to make something go right.
Whoa. There's 16 on board right now. Sequinox just used both of his heals on the minion there. You talked several turns ago about the swipe to face setup, but then just try and UI him in the face. That, again, was a very realistic prospect. We can see, obviously, it wouldn't have worked. Sequinox would have just spellstoned his own minions to heal. But it's a potential out that Tom could have looked at and tried at least to find a win for himself.
Yeah, I think he thinks he might still have a go.
Has become our greatest
He really need to get that much damage through his Spellstone now, and you've got to think with 9 cards left,
Yeah.
your opponent's got 1 Spellstone, like
Sure.
even worst case.
Sequinox trying to decide exactly how much time he has here. Can he just keep trading forever? Does he win with inevitability if he just kills every minion? Or is it worth him just setting up some kind of lethal situation for himself?
It's very scary versus
So
this Druid, though.
many
If you leave a
possibilities.
minion on the board, things could get out of hand pretty quick.
Yep. Through a 4-9 taunt, though.
Yes.
Almost out of time.
Okay. So Whispering Woods, Power of the Wild, and then Armor.
Yep.
We can see that the nice weird combo of a Dread Infernal Defile gets the job done anyway. But this is the best push I think it's going to do. Because again, this is a board with double Savage Roar and a swipe that you just murder them. It doesn't matter what health.
Right.
You just go.
Oh, that Spellbreaker makes things interesting as well. You now have several ways to clear up this board if you want to. I don't know how much damage that Spellstone's at, but you can use that as well in various combinations.
Don't you just want to Dread Infernal Defile?
I think you do, yeah.
Because
It's just kind of interesting to me that basically any card in your hand right now plus Defile does clear this board.
yeah, but the other cards claim more of your own board than some of the others, right?
Yeah.
Whereas this, you loses the Geist, but only loses the Geist if you play the Spellbreaker, then that suddenly causes an issue because then he wipes, I think, almost all of his board.
Yes.
Except the Dread Infernal.
Yeah.
Looks to me like this is the time you throw in the towel. That Twilight Drake getting the work done. Look at this, like, swipe, swipe, hero power is 11. It's only on 13. Does swipe, swipe keep him alive? Not through Bone Mare, but
So I'm going to go fishing first, though.
I think there's Plague left.
You.
But
I can rest.
it wasn't there, and Sequinox takes the win. But that was, I would say, his best matchup he has versus the Token Druid, would you say?
Yeah, he has a few pretty decent matchups against the Token Druid. Of course, one of them was banned out, which is that Control Priest
Yes,
that
exactly.
he's brought specifically. So now he has the mirror match, but he has the slightly more modern version of Token Druid with the extra minions, the Saronite Chain Gangs, and the Strong Shell Scavengers.
Yep.
And then Quest Rogue, which is, you know, you can go...
Pretty sure I got the correct call out of all the casters there with Azalina.
Yeah, you pick the card that, like, unbeknownst to you, just gets buffed.
I knew it,
down
I
the
saw
line.
it coming.
Just creates all kinds of madness later on. Yeah, Raven actually just, like, picks Azalina because he was playing some absolute dumpster trash tier Hunter deck that just burned all its cards and then drew its one of Azalina sometimes to work as some card drawing.
We play Rexar, so it's exactly the same thing sometimes.
Right.
Kind of.
Except actually a good card, yeah.
You saying Azalina's not a good card?
It wasn't back then, no!
It was for Hunter. So anyway, moving on. Potentially the last game if Tom takes it, but Sequinox has been fighting back. And this, I feel like, it's just something you've been taking joy in lately, Sol. It's Quest Rogue.
Yes.
And it is going to be against, of course, Tom only has the Token Druid left as he gets into his happy place by the looks of things. Full Zen moment there for Tom.
That honestly looked like he just woke up.
It's like, oh.
Yeah,
Okay.
he just suddenly, like, startled, like, oh, Hearthstone, yeah, I remember this.
Hey, look, Tom. We're on your time zone, not the other way around.
It's very true. Oh, this is a ugly-looking opening hand from Sequinox, which is the first time I think anyone said Sequinox and ugly in the same sentence ever.
Yeah, I was a bit worried that the quest was playing you in. Oh, I was like, what? Yeah, you play the quest. I have no idea what you're going to say.
strongly disagree with this turn one. Rick.
Oh, this is a ropey-looking quest going on here.
Yeah.
But yes, carry on, sorry. bad hand at all.
Right, yeah, Elven Minstrel is at least decent against Druid, can coin it out, but you know, double Vanish Valera is nothing in the early game to do. So Sequinox will just be hoping that Tom doesn't have anything too explosive, because Vanishes are great cards in the matchup, but can you sit back and do nothing and then just use Vanish to rely on? Well, yes is the answer sometimes, if you can then fall back on Valera afterwards as well.
Yeah, because a lot of the time in a perfect world, you want to vanish with prep and then throw a board together again.
I think a lot of the time in perfect world, you want to be alive going into your Valera turn and then just vanish after that, right? Because you can just vanish and you literally don't care what you... Sorry, you can just Valera and you just literally don't care what your opponent does that turn, because you just know that you're going to vanish them the next turn, which is always that full board reset.
What you can't do is vanish, then vanish again.
No.
That's what I thought you could do when Valera got announced. I thought I thought you effectively like kept a copy of the card in hand.
Oh, that would like transition to the next turn.
I thought once per turn,
Gotcha.
you double the card basically. I was like, this is insane.
It's still pretty insane.
It is, but it would have been really insane. Sonya getting cleared up there, not the highest impact Sonya in the world that we've seen, but it did get, you know, some form of job done.
Yeah, and with 2 Brewmasters in hand, it was just enough, you know, to do what it had to do. This isn't a matchup. You know, I was talking to Kibler. Kibler came off, I believe, casting a Sequinox series himself, where I had some thoughts about his Sonya usage, and you know, Kibler was making the argument that Sonya isn't particularly useful once you get the quest done, because you can't suicide your 4/4s into pretty much anything that Token Druid makes after that. So just using it to get the job done somewhere along the line.
And if you can suicide the mid, you're not in a great spot, because they've got some big minions on the board. Drawing double Violet Teacher, quite unfortunate for Tom when paired with drawing the Oaken Summons as well. So I don't believe he's running like a one-of Oak dude, is he?
Oh, one-of Oak dude. No, he's not.
Oak man.
Yeah.
His hand got awfully large for Sequinox.
Yeah.
Very
so
quickly.
many options.
A couple of Elven Minstrels will turn what was a very poor-looking hand into an extremely versatile one.
Tom, not his turn, so doesn't need to look at the board.
Drink with
Go
me,
back to sleep
friend.
for a second.
Yeah.
Oh, just focusing in. Maybe he's just transferring his consciousness to the astral plane of world champions. He's just conversing with Pavel and Fireback now on some kind of weird place.
3 out of 5 now on deckhand, 4 in hand, and then either of the vanishes works to get 5 out of 5. Sequinox can essentially just sit back here for as long as he wants. There is no world, I think, where he just uses a vanish here to complete the quest on the deckhand. As long as he's not under threat, he doesn't need to complete his quest.
Right.
As soon as he is under threat, he can neutralize that threat with vanish and finish the quest with the deckhand at the same time.
Right, Tom just kind of doing a whole lot of nothing there. But he has got Malfurion now, and he is edging towards that UI to refill the hand. Oaken Summons is just a dead card though, and with UI that's kind of frustrating.
It is.
Just a space in hand that you're not allowed to use anymore.
Right. Sequinox very much considering his options here. He is like the obvious play here, like the vanilla play this turn is just to spend your mana and go like Novice Engineer, Giggling Inventor. But then obviously you're taking a very long walk into a very short Spreading Plague from your opponent. But how bothered are you by Spreading Plague when you kind of want your opponent in a weird way to just make an annoying board so that you have an excuse to vanish and finish your quest?
It's not a very short walk into a very long Spreading Plague.
Pick your poison, doesn't really matter.
So do you just, Tom here, do you just Whispering Woods Soul and just say, see what happens?
I honestly think if he just continues to nap through his turn as he's doing through his opponents, he has an equal win rate in this matchup.
You think Tom's that good? Wow. I know he's good, but literally not playing the game and potentially winning,
Yeah.
it's pretty good. This is the one turn though, I'd say. Sequinox has to do something here.
He does, but he has the tools available to do that. with Phantom Knives now as well, or the quest usage. He has so many different ways to be able to push through this board state.
I was waiting for some weird sequence of events where the quest gets burned because you vanish or something, and then you're like, oh, no.
Oh, she's dead, isn't he? Yep, Exactsies.
Yes, because I didn't even see the last charge of dagger there. Well, that could have gone much better for Sequinox, considering his opening hand was not great, but the double bounce on the bench, like you said, that just simply draws
The full board state with Quest Rogue. One turn where he made a complete mess, and then one turn where he turned a very simple lethal into a very complicated lethal.
Yeah.
I'm not sure deliberately or not.
And I will say, it's actually very easy to do. Like, I found myself before, if I'm under pressure, being so focused on my opponent pressuring me on the board that I don't look at his health total.
Oh, that's exactly where I was.
I just don't look at the health total and realize, oh wait, I can just kill them.
Right.
Like, wait, I'm trying to claim minions when I can just hit them in the face and win. It's very easy to just tunnel, and you don't even notice yourself doing it.
Right, because, you know, I already set it up and said, you know, as soon as the board state gets made, you have a really nice vanish turn. Then the board state got made, but the vanish was a little bit awkward because the death rattle was going to leave 2/2s in play. Then I got very excited that, you know, Phantom Knives was still a clear and like all kinds of wonderful stuff. But, oh, you know, he's dead.
Yeah, and I will say, just as a final point, that really does highlight the whole, well, Token Druid took, what, 5 turns, 6 turns to get going and do anything?
Yeah.
And that gave Quest Rogue all time in the world. Talk about Token Druid. Yeah, on to a mirror and double wild growth from Sequinox and wild growth with the Nourish from Tom. He does have the coins, so I feel like this is a fair game at this point.
It is, but Sequinox just has a little bit more juice in his deck, which might make things interesting, because one of the big problems in the Token Druid matchup historically is that you can't really make any board that doesn't just make you immediately lose the game to Spreading Plague. And originally, like, this matchup was being played as a fatigue matchup very early on when the deck first appeared. Then people started to realize that, you know, maybe that was kind of futile, and that, you know, that big explosion of threats versus threats happened at the end of the game anyway, so you might as well do it a bit earlier on.
Save everyone's time.
Plus, yeah, they just got really bored with 45-minute Token Druid games. But now that this has developed a little bit, you have the opportunity as the Druid with the Saranai Chain Gang deck, for example, to make these slightly narrower and taller board states that don't get completely blown out by Spreading Plague.
Okay. Why did he play that?
Well, it looks silly, I agree, but it was the point I was just making, right? Like, I think Tom understands he can't just wait this out and play a conventional Token Druid mirror and trade threat for threat, because then he just loses every single time, right? There's so much more gas in Sequinox's deck.
And also with this hand as well, the second there isn't exactly a swipe or a Spreading Plague, well, then you Power the Wild and kill your opponent, then you win. So, I was kind of joking, just going, oh, you know, why would you even play that? But that's kind of the whole point you're getting across, right? It's like, so if you say, well, why am I even playing this? Then you do fatigue, then you play it. So
right. I mean, if you can divine on turn 4 that if you wait and do nothing and cast this Whispering Woods on turn 22 of the game, and that eventuality works out in your favor, more power to you. You're a genius. Yeah, but no one can do that. So just playing your cards in what can work out as favorable spots for you is just a much better.
And I will say, Tom didn't just throw this out there and cross fingers. This is a...
Tom looks like he's chilling. I think he's okay. I think
there was just a moment where I was like, bro. Yeah. Well, he didn't attack with 2 of them.
No, he did not.
So he is, in fact, not fine.
He is not chilling at all.
He's not chilling all day.
Get out.
Dink. For DJ. I'll pass that one across. But yeah, what I was getting at is there was a plan, right? There was the Power of the Wild. If Spreading Plague was played, then it wouldn't... There's nothing else to follow up with, so the tokens live. Power of the Wild like you did. You did miss a couple of attacks there, maybe taking a little bit too long. But now, Spreading Plague with the Soul of the Forest is unfortunate, I would say, for Mr. 60229.
That is one way of looking at it.
And now, Sequinox has the... Oh, here we go. Sequinox has the freedom to use Nourish for a draw. to get these buff cards now. You know, he can go for Branching Bats, he can go for Savage. Tom now is going to throw the Spreading Plague in the way, has the Arcane Tyrant as well. But doesn't have anything to buff them up with.
He doesn't. It is a good counterpunch, though. He needed something to get himself back into this game state very, very rapidly. And yeah, Sequinox quite rightly just slowing down just for a second. It does look like a very obvious nourish, I agree, but there is no reason just to snap it out there. He does need to just consider all of his draws and consider, you know, what the various attacks he can make are before he commits to a line.
Yeah, I think if Tom do anything except Spreading Plague there, he just loses almost on the spot.
Yeah, maybe.
Because Tom also seen 0 buffs from Sequinox, probably has to assume there's one there. I know. There's the nourish for the draw, he can still get buffs. Wait, did he fully trade in before the draw?
He did, yeah.
Time waits for no one.
He's playing power, he's playing one power.
Playing one copy of Power of the World, yeah, I was thinking that as well.
This is a big deal. He loses 4 minions now to these 1/5s. Well, you loses 3 because there's only 3 1/5s, but yeah, you get the gist of my plan here. He actually loses the board now, and although there is a Spreading Plague, there's a UI there. So Sequinox has still got game. He hasn't got that much game this turn.
What I will say is if he did draw the Power of the Wild after the fact there, he still would have buffed all of his 2/1s into 3/2s, right? And been completely resistant to the swipe anyway, like after the fact.
Yeah, I just meant you wouldn't be resistant to the 1/5s.
Sure.
They just lost 4 minions with the hero power there potentially. When he wouldn't have lost, he would have lost 2. Now we see the joy of Flibbertin's Floop duplicating and mimicking this giggling inventor.
And this is the difference, right? Because despite Tom going for the risky play with the early Whispering Woods and it getting countered by Spreading Plague, which is absolute worst case scenario, actually in a conventional Tokyo-Druid mirror, if you were to evaluate this situation and say, okay, what's been used? Tom has used 1 Spreading Plague, 1 Whispering Woods in terms of like very relevant cards in the matchup.
1 Branching Pass and 1 Power of the Wild, right?
Sure. I'm talking about like
but
developing board states,
right?
right?
Okay,
Like
okay,
last board state
okay.
wins,
Yep,
essentially,
yep.
right? In Token Druid Mirror. Sequinox has actually used a Soul of the Forest.
Yep.
So if this was just a conventional Token Druid matchup, you could argue that Tom was actually in a fine position. The fact that Sequinox just has the ability to make 3 or 4 extra board states with the random, you know, taunt package minions that he has in his deck means that Tom is still fighting from a very significant disadvantage.
It's like an unfair battle royale moment right now.
Right.
Is it, well, my opponent just has more stuff than I do, so they're gonna win.
Yeah, my opponent just landed on a double heavy.
Right. If you just take your UI and be happy with it right now?
I am quite often very happy with the UI.
Could trade in a 2/1.
I wonder.
Plague for 2 and then Strong Shell. And just sell UI next turn.
I like, these are all words, and I'm very interested in what you're saying. But it's turn 10 and there's an Ultimate Infestation in hand.
Okay. I mean, that was my first thing, right?
Yeah,
I'm not arguing with that.
I like that you're thinking, but sometimes...
Thank you, Tom. You appreciate when I think.
Thinking is overrated.
I've told you this for years and you keep laughing at me.
You have.
And now you just feel like Tom is just 1 turn behind everything that Sequinox can do.
He absolutely is.
There's a UI, but UI's not going to have to till next turn now, and Sequinox can pretty much do it. Ooh, healthy.
The circle of life is over.
I think you saw it on Sequinox's face as well last turn when he cast his UI and he kind of made his play and he sat back in his chair. Oh, sorry, he sat forward in his chair and kind of awaited Tom's play. And when Tom's play was not UI of his own, he then sort of, okay, sat back. He's like, okay, I'm in control. This is great.
I just have more stuff than my opponent. You can argue that his deck is just better than his opponent's as well. That's when you gotta start to just learn to trust what's gonna happen and be happy.
Tom trying his best just to scramble, try and find some board state that he can build a platform from, but again, Sequinox has control. He's just that half turn ahead where he's just doing everything first himself. And if Tom ever generates a massive board state, Sequinox has the ability to Spreading Plague, like Strong Shell, for example. It's not just the Soul of the Forest punish that the conventional Token Druid has. This newer version has so many more ways to leverage those Taunt minions.
Yeah, it's very, very scary overall because there's just so much you can do. Like, you could even just double Strong Shell now if you wanted with Power of the Wild, just to make a big board without having to really commit the board creation tools. That makes sense. Even has that Spellstone, which looks to be it's greater, so it'll just kill off the 5/5 if you want.
5/5, yeah.
You can also probably just slow roll this game, to be honest. Just 1/5 into the 1/2, hero power it. Spellstone, go face. You know, not too face. He's got to take play instead. Yeah, that Soul of the Forest act's insane, right? If you don't answer this, Tom, you're probably dead next turn.
I respect it.
I mean, setting up lethal is never a bad idea.
Yeah, and crucially, like this was one of the keys to the old Token Druid mirror, is like you made your big explosive turns like this when you could answer the question, what do I do if he plays Spreading Plague?
Yeah.
And here, Sequinox can answer that question quite comfortably with Power of the Wild, Savage Roar, and Branching Paths in hand, and Strong Shell to buff up the taunts if need be. He has so many ways to chew through a Spreading Plague that it's just really kind of irrelevant to him at this point.
And when you beat Spreading Plague and have stuff on the board still,
yeah,
that's the final hurdle, I would say, in this matchup.
What I will say is the worry for him potentially can be Spreading Plague Soul of the Forest, like whether he has the ability to push his way through that while being secure enough to just not die to a counter swing the other way. But as you mentioned earlier when I was going through my like kind of threat allocation thing, Tom has used Branching Paths already, so his massive damage output potential is not as high as it could be.
Yeah, the ludicrous speed output of the Token Druid. This looks very meager in the face of Sequinox's board. Like I said, I talked about how powerful Malfurion is, but it ain't that good.
No.
It can't completely solo games, especially mirror matches. The scratch, almost cartoon-like scratch of the head, the thinking face.
Right.
And then the, 1, 2, 3.
Next up, counting on fingers, followed by running out, followed by pulling off his socks and finishing off on his toes.
I was wondering where you were going with that.
Get your mind out of the gutter, Raven.
Get your words out the gutter, then I will.
Never.
See, this is where Sequinox is just a much better player than I am. I would have gone explosive stuff.
Yeah.
It probably gets there. Let's go.
Right.
I'll say, don't get me wrong, I don't get caught out by the rope. But I also miss lethal all the time.
Yeah.
Death is eternal.
So we're about to find out. It's not patently obvious. Neither of us have been bothered to count whether it's been lethal or not. We've just left that to Sequinox. I'm sure you guys in Twitch chat have been screaming at us for several minutes.
That's what it is, but it kind of is. Even now the swipe for an extra 4 next turn, and what does Tom do versus this? No Spreading Plague. There are far too many attacks to consider even a giggling inventor to stop this happening.
Right.
Tom's just playing UI because favorite card.
Yep.
It's like, you know what? I started this on a UI.
Hey, Sequinox, nice win. Just a reminder, I kept this card and won a World Championship, all right?
Yeah. You beat me once. I beat everyone else 1,000 times so far. So beat that. But Sequinox taking a win, a sigh of relief, and there's always going to be just a slight, like, I got Tom.